Good evening and welcome to our last bulletin for the day. I'm Stephen Enti. Let's begin with the day's major news summaries. And remember, you can follow our live stream on Facebook and on 3news.com. Members of Parliament have been expressing varied views of the 2018 budget, which will be presented by the Finance Minister on Wednesday. Whilst the minority expects nothing new, the majority members think it is one that will impact positively on the lives of Ghanaians. And the Special Prosecutor's Bill has been passed by Parliament and awaiting presidential assent. With this passage, the Office of the Special Prosecutor will be established as a specialized agency to investigate specific cases of corruption involving public officers, individuals in the private sector, and politically exposed persons in the performance of their functions. And the fourth prosecution witness in the trial involving the murder of former API's regional chairman of the New Patriotic Party, Adams Mahama, has mounted a strong defense for his earlier comments that Gregory Afoko was responsible for Adams Mahama's death. Tofik Mutala, during cross-examination on Tuesday, alleged the deceased, while on his bed at the hospital, told him before his demise. Those are our major news highlights. Remember, you can follow our live stream on 3news.com and on Facebook. Up next is the big one. Welcome back. Now, the Special Prosecutor's Bill has been passed by Parliament, awaiting presidential assent. With this passage, the Office of the Special Prosecutor will be established as a specialized agency to investigate specific cases of corruption involving public officers, individuals in the private sector, and politically exposed persons in the performance of their functions.
The bill outlined the necessity of the establishment of the special prosecutor in view of the institutional bottlenecks that impedes the fight against corruption. The bill gives the special prosecutor the authority to effectively investigate and prosecute cases of corruption and restore public confidence in the justice delivery system and, by extension, government.
We are left with about 2 or 3 clauses to finish with a bill, and in the order paper, third reading of the bill has been advertised.
Appointment of the special prosecutor and other staff will be done by the President on the nomination by the Attorney General, subject to approval by Parliament by an absolute majority. The office is expected to have 4 divisions: the administrative, prosecutions, Asset Recovery Unit and Management Divisions. Chairman of the Constitutional and Legal Committee, Ben Abdallah, could not tell how soon the prosecutor could be appointed.
As for when exactly the person will be appointed to occupy the office, I can't tell, but I believe that it will be as soon as possible, because the President himself is very serious about this whole establishment. And I believe he would not take too much time in ensuring that the right person is appointed to occupy the office.
The House had in earlier amendments removed the independent that was attached to the prosecutor because some MPs did not find it appropriate. They argued the prosecutor would not be independent once he or she is appointed by the executive. Meanwhile, some members of the minority say the bill is one that will witch hunt
political opponents. They said even though they'll support every move to fighting corruption, they're convinced the office setup is one to fulfill a political campaign.
The allegation and assertion that this bill will witch hunt political opponents is still there. We cannot wish it away, because it's a very important office that we have created with enormous powers. The special prosecutor will have enormous powers. The powers can be used capriciously. The powers can be abused. I mean, it's a political office that we are establishing, founded or in pursuant of a political promise that cannot elude anybody. And that's why in debating the clauses of the bill, we are at all times mindful of the fact that the office can be abused, the powers can be abused, the rights and liberties of individuals can be abused. So we have crafted provisions, in some cases, that circumscribe the powers of the special prosecutor. We have done it in such a way, we've debated the provisions of the law in such a way that will minimize the propensity to use the bill to abuse the civil liberties and fundamental rights.
So why didn't the minority oppose it?
Why will we oppose it? Why? You mean we don't want to fight corruption?
If you're saying it's supposed to witch hunt political opponents.
We are not saying that. I am saying that there is the propensity, there's the likelihood that it can be used that way. But we want an institution that can fight corruption.
You are saying it's a political setup. So is that to say that if the NDC comes to power, you will do away with the special prosecutor?
No. I'm not saying that it's a political setup by the MPP for the purpose of the MPP. I'm saying that it's a political office established in pursuant of a political promise. Okay? It now becomes an institution of state. And because it's a political office, set up for the pursuant of the manifesto of the MPP, it can be abused. But now it's a national office. Okay? Political in character. Who is going to appoint the special prosecutor? The Attorney General and the President. Who are the people to be shortlisted? The civil society is already saying that the process must be open, transparent, and competitive. Why? Because they think that the person who is to occupy the office as special prosecutor must win the confidence of the generality of Ghanaians. I mean, the Americans have said that the special prosecutor must not only look backwards, must also look to the present and future. And so you see, many people, it's not only the minority that is concerned. Many people are concerned. I mean, and we know, history shows clearly that, I mean, when the powers of such an office is not circumscribed in such a way that it respects the fundamental rights and freedoms of individuals, it can be abused.
This is still news at 10. We'll take a break. And when we return, we'll tell you about the expectations of MPs in Parliament as the Finance Minister gets ready to present the 2018 budget statement tomorrow. Welcome back. Now, members of Parliament have been expressing varied views of the 2018 budget, which will be read by the Finance Minister Wednesday. Whilst the minority expects nothing new, the majority members think it is one that will impact positively on the lives of Ghanaians.
Is that the aging of the John Mahama administration is what, and that is why we seen the good feel factor. You know, all governments, also as a country, what the minority must focus on, we're telling the nation, having, and now Ghanaians what to expect in the next. So it's what Ghanaians, what they did yesterday was, so it is like a preemptive, you know, discouraging for in this administration. Overall for the presidency and confidence in us. Deliver. And tomorrow you start this.
I expect another big story that the government will bring just to, you know, deceive the people, deceive in the sense that, you know, they talk big and do very little. So I'm not really expecting any new thing from what we had in 2017, because many of the issues that were captured, be it one district, one factory, one constituency, 1 million, one village, one dump, I haven't seen any of them coming through. So they will be repeated.
our friends in minority, of course, don't have much to do, so all they can do is to rush and put things out that trying to preempt the budget discussion. But of course, Ghanaians know where they are coming from. This is the year of action. So the budget that is coming, I expect that there's going to be a lot of action items in it, including where the minister said that they're going to reduce the price of electricity so that the good and people can enjoy. So it's going to be an action budget. That's what I will put for sure.
Well, as usual, I'm expecting the finance minister to quote something from the Bible to open his statement, as usual, definitely. And most importantly, I'm expecting the finance minister to touch on the security nature of the country, and also talk about how the government is going to create jobs for the people, the teeming youth of Ghana, and also talk about how they are going to fight corruption in the system, because as we speak now, there's so many corruption in the system. Goods and services are procured through single source procurement without boss approval, etc.
Well, I'm sure that you would remember that last year's budget came with a lot of excitement, especially with spare parts dealers who were jubilating on some removal of taxes, import duties and stuff like that. But a year on, we have the Clement Boateng, who is the public relations officer of the Abose Okain Spare Parts Dealers Association, is here with me in the studio to give us their expectation of tomorrow's budget. Mr. Boateng, good evening. Thank you. We're happy that you're here. So tomorrow, you're expecting a lot of tax cuts for your members?
Good evening and thank you for...
I like the way you started with a smile. It's a big question, right?
For having me. Yeah, as you rightly said, in March, when the finance minister presented a 2017 budget, you know, there were some taxes that they called nuisance taxes that were abolished. Some of them were the 17.5% VAT on the financial transactions. We also had the 17.5% VAT on the domestic airline ticket. And also we had, you know, with the informal sector, we were paying a flat rate VAT of 3%, which the previous government migrated us back to the standard 17.5. But the finance minister also took us back to the 3% flat rate.
Which in principle should have been lower, right?
Yes,
but
yes.
There are many traders and businessmen who are complaining that the fixed 3% fixed VAT is also pinching them. So which way is it? Either you get the 17.5 or you get the flat rate?
No, we prefer the flat rate. So that is why I'm saying that we were taking back to the flat rate of 3%, which we are enjoying it. And those who are agitating that they would prefer the 17.5% is the reason why, because they always filed input and output, and when they file the input and output, they always want to make claims from the government. So that is the more reason why the government found it necessary, you know, to put everybody in the 3% flat rate so that you don't make any claims. And we think we, those who are in the informal sector, is of benefit to us.
So let's put it straight. So a year on after last year's budget, you think that your members are better off?
Yeah.
But you want more?
Yes. To be frank with you, as I told you, those nuisance taxes were abolished, and little did we expect that we, those in the spare parts industry, will have our 10% import duty abolished. So when that was mentioned, there was wild, you know, jubilation, not only in Abosokan, but those who sell spare parts countrywide. Yeah, so we were thinking with that rebate or that tax cut that we had, we were thinking it was going to, you know, impact positively on our business, thereby making prices cheaper.
But it did not?
It did not.
Why?
Yes. The reason why it did not is simply because when the tax cut was abolished, you know, it took, because it had to go through some process. So even though it was announced in March, it started effectively working in July this year. And then when it started working, we saw that what the windfall that we are supposed to make is not coming along, simply because the GRA, Custom Division of GRA, had come out with a new benchmarks for
recalculating that.
Yes, the duty. The duty. And you know, because the import duty of 10% had been abolished, and the import VAT, before we pay the import VAT, we have to combine the import duty plus the CIF, that is the cost, insurance, and freight. You put the two together, then you come out with the import VAT. So now, since the import duty is no more, which means they have to work out the import VAT on only the CIF. But what we are finding now is that they have come out with a new benchmarks, you know, to determine the values of.
So you get the tax rebate with the right hand,
yes,
and it's snatched away with the left hand.
Very good.
And you're suffering. You don't want that.
Yes.
So you want the 2018 budget to now redefine the rebate,
yes,
and make it possible for you to enjoy what was promised last year.
Yes.
But do you see this as feasible under our economic circumstance?
Well, it's something which can be done. Otherwise, then the tax rebate that they gave it to us, it's nothing to write home about, because
it's not beneficial.
It's not beneficial. It's not beneficial, and that is the more reason why people are saying, if we come to our so kind, prices are on the high side, because what the windfall that we are supposed to enjoy as a result of the tax cut is being taken another way round for us to pay because of the new benchmarks that they are using, you know, to come out with the valuation of the parts that we bring.
So beyond these, what are your other expectations going into the budget? Because I know that you're businessmen, all right, you're concerned with tax cuts and everything, but you're also people who have families, you have children in school, you pay healthcare bills, you register your vehicle, you buy food. So beyond that, what other expectations do your members have?
What we are expecting is we have a special import levy of 2%. We used to have 1%, which was taken away during the 2017 budget, and we are expecting that with the coming of this 2018 budget, that special levy of 2% should also be taken away. Right,
Mr. Boateng, we're grateful for your time, and thank you extremely for coming. We wish you the best. We hope that your expectations are met tomorrow when the finance minister presents the budget. But let's move away from that, and some bad news. Consumers and vehicle owners should actually brace themselves up for a 5 to 10% increase in fuel prices at the pumps. The increase is expected to take effect Thursday, November 16. The increase has been attributed to upsurge in world market prices and marginal losses on the forex market. Depending on an OMC pump price for petrol, it will likely increase to 4 cedis, 66 pesos per litre, from the current 4 cedis 32 pesos. Diesel will also increase to 4 cedis 68 pesos from the current 4 cedis 23 pesos, and the pump prices for both products could be expected to rise by between 3 to 11%, depending on the oil marketing companies. And government has said the 2018 budget and economic policy statement will dwell largely on improving Ghana's agric sector. In spite of varied views by industry watchers, the Ministry for Agriculture, Dr. Owusu Koto, is confident the budget will help redirect the youth into agriculture to grow the country's agribusiness sector.
The agriculture is featured very prominently in the allocation of budgetary resources in order to expand that sector to absorb the huge unemployed youth that we see wandering around Accra. I was very surprised last week, Wednesday, when I visited Esuchare rice projects to find that young taxi drivers and other people, and young men in Accra, are now turning into rice farmers. It really encouraged me, and they are asking me to make more lands available for them to be able to do more, for them to earn more money. That is the new atmosphere emerging in the countryside. Government will continue to encourage that, to absorb, to get that, redirect the youth into agriculture so they become agri-business people to help this country to move forward.
An international relations expert and Dean of the Armed Forces Command and Staff College, Professor Vladimir Nchidanso, has advised the South African sub-regional body not to intervene in the happenings in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe's ZANU-PF party has accused its military chief of meddling in the country's politics with a treason accusation. This follows the ousting of the country's vice president.
Does this development have any potency to cause some instability in Zimbabwe?
Certainly, yes. When you have a military putting the mouth in politics, it's scary. It's scary not only for Zimbabwe, but for the region also, perhaps for the whole of Africa. And so it's scary because the picture is not all that also clear. Who is in charge? What does the military chief mean when he talks about defending the revolution? Is he on the side of Mugabe? What does the wife of Mugabe mean? What does the youth mean? It's a little murky, and we hope we'll get things clearer and we don't get to a situation where the already very volatile situation in Zimbabwe is exacerbated by military intervention whose end would not know.
Already, General Constantino Chiwenga has been accused of treasonable conduct. Now, looking at the influence that Robert Mugabe has in terms of the loyalty that the army, some army chiefs also hold for him, I'm asking if this can really be sustained to actually cause that kind of uprising that would cause some worry from your analysis.
This is exactly what I was saying, because we do not know on whose side the army chief is. But if by his words we make any analysis, then I would say he seems to be wanting to defend the revolution. Defending the revolution also means that he is defending Mugabe, because that is the revolution. But it becomes murkier when you have the wife warning him to stay in the barracks, when you have the youth also of the ruling party also warning. And it looks to me that there is some schism in the party, and that is what the army chief is looking at and making it impossible for it to escalate into any kind of instability. So it's not clear. The picture is never clear. Mugabe has also kept quiet. Those who are warning the army chief are warning him, but then who are they? Are they on the side of Mugabe? Are they protecting Mugabe? Is Mugabe senile? Is he unwell? The situation is very murky, and we need to just pray and see how it pans out in Zimbabwe.
From the sub-regional body, I mean, and South Africa in this instance, standing tall on this, what kind of reaction would ensure that this does not escalate into a situation that would affect the people of Zimbabwe?
In actual terms, I mean, I do not think any of the sub-regional countries around would want to intervene. Not even the whole body of SADC would intervene until it has escalated into a kind of civil war. Until we have seen something like that, don't expect anybody, don't expect SADC, don't expect South Africa to even go in. They have been beating their fingers once in Central African Republic. So I do not expect South Africa to go in to quell any rebellion or whatever it is. No, it wouldn't happen. And mind you, the situation in Zimbabwe is akin to that of South Africa. And so they will be more cautious. And it is the only superpower around who could intervene. And I don't think they would do that. Not even Zambia will also try it, knowing very well that they have also a problem on hand.
And that's how we end News at 10. Remember that we will be bringing you comprehensive coverage of tomorrow's budget presentation in Parliament, online, on radio, and on TV. I'm Stephen N.T. Thank you for staying. On behalf of the crew, good night.